Hello.
Hi, Annie.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We'll get started momentarily. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today as part of our webinar series. Today, we are talking about our talent and culture outlook for 2026. I have Steve Dion with me this morning, as well as a wonderful panel that he's going to introduce you to. So I'm going to turn it over to him this morning.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you everybody for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And I'm excited to have a panel of three very accomplished, very seasoned HR executives to share with us what they're seeing about talent and culture outlooks for this next year. As part of this webinar series, if you've joined us before, you know that every year at the beginning of the year, we'd like to kick it off with this panel. And I'm always excited to see what it's going to be each year. I mean, it's had a lot of changes year over year. And I think we're excited to both proctor some questions that I have, but I want to say right up front, please use the Q&A and the chat feature to be able to let us know what questions you have, because we'd like to spend our time talking about that as well. So I'm Steve Dion. For those of you that don't know me, I lead Dion Leadership, which is now a Gallagher company. So one of the changes we had this last year is we were purchased by a much larger organization, Gallagher, and now I'm the practice lead of learning and development for that business. And our panel today is Ani McNeil, who is a HR executive at Trinity Health. So we have the healthcare industry represented here. Maureen Pittenger, who is the HR executive at Domino's. So we have another food retail franchise business. And then Melanie Stepp, who is the HR executive over at Veritas, which is in the manufacturing sector, and have done some interesting things this last year with mergers and acquisitions. So we put together this panel of three diverse HR industries, different industries and HR executives, and yet people that I know personally have done some really strategic work and are in the advancing areas in their field and their culture. So first, thank you all for joining me today. Before we get into the introductions, though, let me first do a quick level set on our business and organization. So why do we talk about this? Well, we're a leadership and OD practice. So we're doing items like training, team development, assessment, org design, org development. So anything in talent and culture. So that's why this topic is really relevant for us. And as I can today, I'll happily share some examples from clients that we work with as well. And particularly the areas we are working in are these particular four areas of kind of practice and focus. Today, we're going to really kind of spread, I think, through all of these conversations. And I could see us also getting into topics that we don't get into, like recruiting, compensation, labor relations, other areas as well. Just want to level set kind of our business and the practice that I'm particularly working in. And then before we get into our prepared remarks, I wanted to start by saying one of the things I've most appreciated in going from Dion Leadership, which had 60 people, to now Gallagher, which has over 70,000 people, is we have so much data and access to information. So in past years when I've done this webinar, I have pulled maybe Gartner studies or other studies. This time I pulled some of our own real life data from our clients and information, just to kind of see what we're seeing in the market. And then I'm really looking forward to seeing if our three panelists also would share and corroborate these items as well. So a poll that we did in the fourth quarter of this last year was really about economic and labor fluctuations. So how have those impacted your business? And of course, it was a slight negative or a significant negative was the highest end. And particularly the areas that were most concerning were in retention, attraction, and of course, costs within the organization, items like culture, et cetera. 45% of those organizations said they impacted their culture as well. And I thought this was interesting. And I'm looking forward to unpacking this and see if this was sort of that moment in time in October, or do we see this happening throughout 2026, is higher levels of stress and burnout, reduced employee engagement, increased workload and staff shortages. I mean, half of the organizations in this study of a few hundred organizations said that. I think that's pretty significant. And so it'll be interesting to see where you guys are as an organization. And then just hot off the presses, every year we go out and actually ask senior HR executives like the ones on our panel today, what are your top strategic priorities for attracting, retaining, and engaging talent? So the data says number one this year was enhancing manager effectiveness. Given what we do for a living, honestly, I was not surprised and excited to see that that is an area of focus. It is not always number one. So we know that through kind of the post-COVID hangover time and jobs changing, the role of managers and how effective they are and how challenging their jobs are is a big challenge. Here's where 2, 3, 4, and 5 are. So preparing leaders for the future went from 4 last time to 2. Improving employee engagement wasn't even on our top list. That's come way up. Compensation tends to fall pretty high in the list of priorities. And benefit cost optimization was number 5, which was a mover up as well. So some of the changes from year over year, what you didn't see in this list, last year, the biggest focus area was enhanced employee communication. So that went from 1 last year to 7 this year, replaced by manager effectiveness. So panel would love to hear your thoughts on how did you move, or we move from communicating globally to the manager's role. Improving employee appreciation went from 2 down to 6, and revamping training and development was a little bit higher. And so the kind of the infrastructure building piece is going down, and slowly moving up the list is incorporating AI into work streams, but it's still not at the top of the list. So there can't be a conversation in a day that we're not talking about AI, I think. So I'm sure we'll bring that conversation into this as well. And then just a couple more things, and before I turn it over to our panel, is what are the metrics, the people metrics that organizations are measuring? Well, they're measuring 1 is employee engagement, 2, of course, turnover, and then 3, I thought this was interesting, leadership trust. So specifically measuring trust as a separate construct than employee engagement. And then last, within these listening measures is, do your organizations do active listening? And what we found in this recent study in December is only 42% of organizations have a clearly defined employee listening strategy. So do they even know what their employees want or need? Only about half of the organizations that we work with do. If they do have strategies, these are the items that they're measuring. They're doing engagement surveys, they're doing one-on-one interviews, some pulse surveys, focus groups at a lower level. So traditional employee engagement surveys, 65% are using that. But again, that's not even fully deployed in all the organizations that we've talked to. And then sadly, I think I'm not happy with this statistic, is of the organizations that do communicate, only 48% of those feel like they've effectively communicated the results and action plans to their organization. So I think as we think about where talent and culture is, how organizations are thinking about understanding that and having proactive strategies, this data says to me that organizations still have a ways to go. That said, let's see that we have some 3 best practice organizations today that hopefully can give you guys some good ideas and examples to do that. Before I get into that, and I'm going to put this up now and I'm going to put this at the end. This is a shameless plug before I get into this, you guys, but Gallagher does a really deep, rich organizational well-being poll, and it just got released just yesterday. So it's going to be open for 3 weeks. If anybody would like data like this, here's a QR code, not please don't do it over this next hour, but go in and take this and you will receive the results of studies like this. So if you are looking to benchmark yourself against other organizations, we have free resources to do that. And again, I'll put this in at the end, but I just didn't want to forget to do that. So with that and getting our kind of head in the room here, I would like to turn it over to our panel to introduce themselves, talk a little bit more about their work and what they do. And Ani, can we start with you, please?
Absolutely. Hello, Steve. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Ani McNeil, as Steve introduced, and I am the Senior Vice President of Human Resources for Trinity Health. And I oversee the hospitals in the Michigan region, Ohio, Florida, and Georgia. I'm in Michigan right now. I should be in Florida, given the cold weather that we have. But Trinity Health, for those that may not be aware, is one of the largest non-for-profit Catholic healthcare organizations nationally. And we have about 130,000 colleagues across multiple states. We're in about 26 different states, but I think now with distributed workforce, we have a colleague in almost every state. We oversee medical groups, hospitals, and also senior communities, PACE, and home care agencies. Specifically for my role, I lead workforce strategy, labor stabilization, talent management, colleague experience and engagement. So just the full range of HR. We are an integrated HR team, meaning we have business partners and we have centers of expertise, and we work very closely with our legal partners that also help us with employment relations issues. Great to be with you.
Thank you, Ani. And Maureen.
Great, thank you. Yes, Maureen Pittenger. I'm the CHRO at Domino's. I've been with Domino's for about 1.5 years. And before that, I spent my career in automotive. It's about 20 years between Ford and Visteon and 7 at Dana, another tier 1 auto supplier. So made the natural move to pizza about 1.5 years ago, which has been great. I'm from Southeastern Michigan, married to my husband for 28 years. We've got 3 adult sons, so enough to keep us all busy there in the spare time. In my role here at Domino's for the HR organization, for us that does include, like for most of us, talent, culture, HR ops, total rewards, and also internal communications rolls up to my team. Domino's is, the #1 pizza company in the world. We've got almost 22,000 stores in 90 markets around the world. From a corporate standpoint, we have about 10,000 team members, and we operate 250 stores in the U.S. Busiest day of the year is fast approaching. If you didn't know this little fun fact, but on Super Bowl Sunday, we alone sell about 2.5 million pizzas. So everybody, order early and get ready to go. But when we talk about kind of the state of culture and talent at Domino's, it's very similar to what Steve showed. Our engagement insights, from 2025, they continue to show a strong commitment to the brand. Domino's employees really have this strong commitment that I'm learning to the brand, which still remains. But there's a lot of opportunities, particularly around our cultural expectations and people wanting to feel really committed and understanding how their work aligns to the strategy. Trust and leadership also took a ding for us, really related to bringing people back to the office and going through some other organizational shifts. So when we look ahead to 26 and what we're going to focus on, again, really similar to a lot of the stuff Steve showed, which we'll get into, we're really looking on building our leadership and talent pipelines across the span of our workforce. And second to that, embedding those cultural expectations. So we're doing a lot of work on helping people understand what it means in this day and age to work at Domino's and what behaviors can be successful. A lot of constraints, not as bad as it was before COVID or during COVID, I should say, in terms of the workforce in the marketplace, but still some constraints. We got the frontline still is expecting a lot of flexibility. And when you have an on-site operating model, it really does require, a lot of creativity to be able to come close to meeting that. But I'm looking forward to the conversation today and learning from all of you. So with that, I can pass it on to Melanie.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's nice to be here and to meet all of you. Thank you to Dion for inviting me to participate. My name is Melanie Stepp. I'm the CHRO for Veritas. I've been with the organization for over 6 years now. We are a tier 1 automotive supplier. In size, we are close to $1 billion in revenue. We have 14 global manufacturing sites and operating in North America, Europe, and China. And we have about 5,000, a little over, employees worldwide. About 18 months ago, in July of 2024, we closed on a major acquisition that nearly doubled the size of our business. The acquired business was privately held, family owned for 175 years, headquartered in Germany, and had been in insolvency or bankruptcy for 4 years. And that, of course, has a major impact on the talent in terms of knowledge loss due to departures, but also the morale of the employees who remain. So, and then, of course, we had the acquiring company who was PE backed, was a compilation of multiple acquisitions itself, headquartered here in the Detroit area, with a much shorter history of, but still substantial, with about 40 years. So we have two large groups with different mindsets about how to do the work, as well as different cultures, not only from a country perspective, but also business culture. So in terms of our current talent situation, our headcount is largely where it needs to be. We recently tackled and have had success with managing a significant turnover situation in Mexico. But got to keep that stable. But the real work is around the skill mix, performance differentiation, and succession, as well as really, coming together as one team. And that's really where our focus has been since the acquisition. Right after that, we worked with Dion leadership on a cultural integration program, because our goal is to be one global company. And with us kind of being on different ends of the spectrum, a lot of work was needed to do that. I'm pleased to report that we've had a lot of progress. It's not over, but really our focus for this year will be to continue down that path, and to really ingrain kind of what that culture is going to be across the organization. But we have a lot of great people worldwide that are really embracing this, and so that makes all the difference in the world. So happy to talk more about that and to learn from others as we go through.
Thanks, Molly. And thanks all of you for the introduction. Now that you know a little bit about these three very different and diverse organizations, feel free to use the Q&A feature to send me some questions, and I will add those into this. But let me actually go back to Ani first then and say, could you start with telling us a little bit more about what some of your current workforce challenges are that are impacting your organization?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. We're coming from three different industries, but I know many of our challenges are likely the same, if not similar. And, in healthcare, I hate to bring up the C word, but so I won't say it fully, but, our current talent and culture reality within healthcare, the way that I best describe it, it's resilient. It has been resilient, but it's stretched, right? So it's our teams have been through prolonged disruption. You open up any social media platform today or watch the news, and you continue to hear some of the challenges that are occurring, no matter what side of the political platform that you're on. And so while our commitment in healthcare and at Trinity is to our mission and to the common good, our sisters, they served everyone, no matter what. And so that mission is very strong and rooted in our organization. But our colleagues they're at a point where they're discerning who they trust, right? And they're discerning, do I trust the organization I work with? Do I recommend this organization to others? Do I recommend this organization as a place to either receive my health care from, or buy pizza from, or purchase products from? And so trust is a key factor in our organization right now, and it's a action that we are talking about from what I call like frontline, from boardroom to frontline. Workload sustainability has been a challenge in healthcare. There's more and more shifting to middle management as we're leaning out administrative functions. And so being mindful of how much more we're applying to our middle management roles, asking them to make sure, you mentioned management effectiveness came up as number one. It's interesting, I just came from a discussion where we were talking about our management effectiveness, or lack thereof, right, program. And so workload sustainability, retention, culture that culture isn't designed by HR. Culture is lived experience within the organization. And it is not an HR issue, right? It's an organizational opportunity to really make sure that we're in a position where we are, making sure people are being heard, seen, and valued. So our focus, culture, engagement, retention, focus on leadership, and all of that has a direct impact, right, on our outcomes and our financial outcomes. As an organization, while we're focused in struggling with workforce shortages, we're also trying to mitigate the federal financial risks and cuts from reimbursement so that we can continue to be relevant in all of our communities that we're serving people.
And Melanie and Maureen, I know you gave some deeper kind of overview of your organization. Anything else you'd want to add or punctuate in terms of specific challenges for this year that didn't come up in your introductory remarks?
I guess the only thing I'll add, Steve, is for us, and I mentioned this a touch, but while the labor market has been a little more employer friendly for our business as compared to how things were in COVID or immediately after. So both for our frontline workers and our office workers, we have a bit more room to ensure some different level of intentionality when we're filling roles, particularly in our stores and in our supply chain centers, in order to really double down on upskilling and delivering what our customers expect ultimately. So that's been a shift over the past few years, because in businesses like ours, especially during COVID and immediately after, it was just a win to get a body, to get a person. So now we're really needing to shift some of those expectations and give managers the support and ability to make discerning decisions and make sure they have enough support around them to hire and train the right people. And that upskilling message is also landing with our office team or our corporate team. So again, making sure that we're preparing people for where we're headed tomorrow and really investing in that is something else that has been top of mind.
I would just add too, from kind of like the automotive perspective, we see a lot in the news lately about supply chain and tariffs, and as well as, the shift from internal combustion engines to EV to, are we doing this? Are we not? In the infrastructure that has to be implemented and pulling back on that, and the laws and the legislation that surrounds it. So there's a lot of uncertainty around a lot of those things right now that is definitely providing for a challenge when it comes to all HR related items in this space, for sure. And I'm hoping that we get a little more clarity from that perspective as we go throughout the year.
Yeah. So the VUCA environment that people talk about has not seemed to slow down from everything I'm hearing from each of the three of you in terms of just dealing with agility, changes. There isn't a status quo, it's reacting, and hence putting pressure on people that are in a managerial or leadership role to know, what do I do when I don't have a playbook for this? I haven't done this, year after year. I don't have a muscle to know how to solve this problem, and, hence the need here. Well, let's start with your leaders. Let's start at the next, kind of the top of the house before we get into some of the programmatic things. These are what you guys are saying. What are your line leaders, your executives, the team you sit on saying? Are they, between us, nobody's listening here, what do they, share these same challenges, or do you have to talk them into the people challenges, or maybe they're seeing them as broader than you are and you're kind of like, calm down, I know what I'm doing here, we're going to get there. So Maureen, what's going on with your senior teams talk about talent and culture?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking, and thanks for reminding me that no one's listening. I can just be open and honest. That's a great lead-in. Yeah, for us, our leadership team is really interested in the culture, and which is such a big, all-encompassing word. So I'll kind of break that down a little bit. There's a lot of, again, referring to the post-COVID need to realign expectations for our workforce. So, I mean, Domino's, like very many, worked remotely for their our corporate team members for years, and we just moved people back. Some people entirely back this past March, and some other people from 3 days to 4 days. And that's just semantics. That's just days in the office. I get that. But what our leadership team is focused on is, are we aligned on what we expect from our team members, like carte blanche from people in the front line to our leaders? So we've been spending a lot of time making sure we're very specific. We've got a whole program about to launch. Domino's strategy publicly is hungry for more. So we've worked on what are the hungry for more characteristics or ways of working that will make you successful. Really working, you guys know how this goes, on making this not just a program or a project, but fully embedded in the entire employee life cycle. Because again, our leadership team is concerned on, are people displaying that hungry for more attitude? Are they displaying it? And then we're kind of being introspective and saying, have we told them what that means? Have we been clear about what that looks like? And have we done a good job in really connecting what they do every day to our strategy so they feel a part of things? So that is really top of mind, and something we didn't quite cover yet in this discussion that our leadership team is focused on. And then, of course, my job is like, how do we make that into a reality, and how do we keep in mind retention and so on while we're engaging in these types of programs?
Ani, how about you? Where's your senior team at?
I would say the senior team is, how do we sustain momentum of what is working really well in the organization, and then managing that with the uncertainty and, just the turbulence within healthcare today. And there's a lot of external factors that, may prevent us from achieving our full goals, the goals that we have for the year. And so how are we managing against that, right? And so we can't just sit back and wait. We have to start planning ahead. And so, our organization has launched what we're calling repositioning. Some are calling it reimagining. And we look at what are the things that we need to run our operation today. What are the things that are helping us to evolve? And what are those items that are going to help us to transform? So it's run, evolve, transform. And run being, those are our daily operations, right? We need daily operations to run. But as we're doing that, we need to look at what's going to take us to that next level of evolving in place. So how do we make access better for patients? How do we create an exceptional colleague experience? That will help us engage our colleagues. It'll help us reduce labor costs. It'll help us, retain colleagues and member experience. So members are patients, their family members, etc. And so evolving in those areas and making sure that if a patient wants to be seen within 24 hours or 48 hours of calling to make an appointment, we have the access to do that. Making sure that we're creating, positive and positive journeys for our colleagues so that there's retention. Retention, I always say that you can have the best laid out growth plan, but if you don't have a talent strategy to accompany a growth plan, then you can't open the doors, right? You can't open the doors and start to see the patients. So that's our primary focus. And then, how do we also utilize technology and AI to help us in areas where we know from a labor cost perspective, we're not winning there, right? So how do we maximize the use? Our senior leadership team has encouraged all of our colleagues, and we meet monthly with all of our top leadership teams, and across Trinity Health, that's probably about a little bit under 400, most senior teams. And our executive team is given the challenge to say it's zero-based thinking, no sacred cows. If you're designing this work or this place from scratch, what would it look like? So it's just giving us the freedom, right, to act, to say, just because we've done it this way for so long, we don't have that ability to continue to do it that way. So how we're, engage your teams in making sure they're not afraid of technology, that you're utilizing. We're slowly, and I think Maureen and Melanie are in the same place, starting to slowly introduce, whether it's Microsoft 365 products like Copilot and Assistant. How do you use those tools to start helping you become more efficient?
Helpful, very helpful. Melanie, anything else you want to jump into, or should we move to the next question?
We can move to the next question.
Okay. Well, let me start to layer in some of the audience's questions in addition to the ones that I have. So there's a question on the mental health landscape for organizations. How do you describe how you support, the data earlier talked a little bit about well-being, stress, burnout. What are you doing besides an EAP program, if anything, to help employees from a mental health perspective?
You want me to start with that
Sure.
question?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I would say as an organization, we deliver mental health services, right? But we also have colleagues that are experiencing, or perhaps their dependents or their, elderly parents or whomever they're caring for might be experiencing it. So we know that it's not just the individual that works for us, it's also the community that they surround themselves with. So I know somebody mentioned outside of EAP, I will say we transitioned to a new EAP service that I will say is probably one of the best EAP services that I've ever engaged with. Because not only are they on site, we offer free counseling sessions, free management coaching sessions, free student coaching sessions, and it's for anybody in the household. So they don't even have to be on your insurance plan to receive the service. We also, as an organization, and this is senior leadership led, every month we have what we call our advancing series, and there is a focus on mental health and well-being. So we know that mental health may be impacted by, several factors. It could be financial, it could be physical, it could be social. So there's many different aspects to what could be impacting someone's mental health condition. And so, we touch on all of those to create a well-rounded offering. And I can provide a couple more examples. I'll provide one more and then I'll turn it over. But we also we utilize our spiritual care and our chaplains within our organization. And we have what we've created across all of Trinity, caring colleague teams. And so these are individuals that have been trained and they round on units, and they're trained to detect if somebody looks distressed. And so maybe they approach you and say, Steve, are you how's your day going today? And oftentimes, if they observe that, people will open up to them. So these teams are available for leaders to deploy on their units, or just through rounding, they experience them.
Melanie, you want to jump in?
Sure. So, I would say that one of the things that we implemented was when it was right after COVID, we rolled out a new performance management process and performance appraisal. And it's a good time for the employees to come together to talk with their managers. And to be effective, right, you have to have good work-life balance, good mental health. And so we put it as part of that process to have a discussion about that. And in every performance appraisal is reviewed by an HR leader. So we can really help employees to get the help, whatever that is needed, very specific to themselves. So, and then we have also rolled out, stress management training, and other things that tackle this topic as well to all employees. So those are a couple different things that we've done.
Okay, great. Yeah, helpful. Well, I'm glad this is a conversation that's being brought up. It's very important. I know I just wrote a blog on happiness in the workplace, and I don't know if you saw that. I would put that in the chat, but about the manager's role of saying it's okay to say, are you happy? Like, how are you doing? And it doesn't mean that they have to triage and be a therapist, but to help them then navigate the systems within their organization. And, it's a role that we all should be playing in the workforce. And it's not only, important for productivity and retention, but it's just, I feel like part of why we exist as communities is to create, or as businesses, is to create better communities as well. So it's great that this is a conversation that we're having more since COVID than I think we had 10 years ago. And I think we're going to continue to get smarter and better at it and have more tools and resources for people. Yet at the same token, it does seem like there are more people more anxious and stressed out and nervous and frustrated and have life functioning issues than we seem to have had in my lifetime. So, Maureen, anything else before we move on this one? I know we got a lot of things to cover.
Yeah, I'm good to move on. Thank you.
Great. So Melanie, can you talk a little bit about, I know in the data we talked about listening tools, like how do you know where your employees are at? So we've all talked today about our workforce is like this, therefore we should do that. What are your listening tools to understand that, to create strategies?
Yeah, I will be honest. I would say a few years ago, we were not doing a very good job of this. And I know it's been, I can't believe it, almost 6 years since COVID. And as I was thinking about, this participating in this, and it's like, I really don't want to say that, just like what Ani was saying. I hate to keep bringing that up, but it had such an impact on, our whole society and of course on work and in what we do. We had done, I would say, a pretty good job, and then that happened and you couldn't be, together. And I feel that impacted kind of how we communicated with our employees. And at the end of 2024, we did an engagement survey, and we had done one a couple of years before, but communication was a key piece of that. And even beyond the engagement survey results and what action plans we did put in place from that, we are doing focus groups, we're doing stakeholder interviews, we've done, culture training and training with our global leaders of, how to listen and how to communicate and how to bring groups together. And it was even just as simple as, bringing back or reintroducing a lot of the things that we had done and we have monthly town halls at all of our sites. And that really just makes a big difference in terms of getting employees to feel comfortable in that setting again and really speak up and us to really understand how they're feeling. And then we have at all of our plants, our plant managers are having sit downs with focus groups of employees as well. That really seems to be helping in terms of understanding how our employees are feeling at this time.
Maureen, I know you guys do a lot of listening as well. What other thoughts do you have that you could add?
Yeah, that's great. We do. We have a really a pretty good formalized program post our engagement survey on doing listening sessions and focus groups. We have culture councils that, again, it's a fancy word for which wouldn't matter if they weren't effective, but they're groups of people in each functional area that are every level of the organization, meant not to be leaders, to really help unpack what the engagement survey tells us. We all know, like Steve, like you referenced when you showed us that data, maybe that was just what was happening on that day. So it's to understand that a bit more and help create meaningful action plans that work for what the company needs and is getting, of course, to what the team members mean and what they're trying to tell us. A big part of what we've had to do, I don't know if this is unique to Domino's, with some of our feedback from our engagement surveys, is to really differentiate what people are telling us they want might be something that we're not able to do, or we're choosing not to do because it's not best, in our opinion, for where our company needs to head. That doesn't mean we're not hearing you, but we are making a different decision. And how can both those things be true? How can it be true that the leadership team really wants to hear from our team members, but at the same time, we might not be able to act on that? The very real example is remote working. People say, I want to be fully flexible, and when I come to the office, the company's saying, we hear you, but we've made a decision that we're not going to do that. We're going to be in the office 4 days, and here's why. Doesn't mean we don't want to listen to you and try to work with you on why that flexibility is important to you and how we can otherwise embed flexibility. So that's been a big shift that we've had to deal with this year, and we've really relied on our culture councils and others to help us unpack that. That's been a strain and has led towards people feeling they don't trust leaders. So we've really had to work on that and understand that we're hearing you, but we've made a different decision, and here's why, and how can we move forward together.
I'm surprised it took 40 minutes to get returned to the office to be part of the conversation today already. Actually,
I know, it's one of those things we're all tired of talking about, but it's still here, right?
Still here. It's still here. Great. I just want to make sure we cover a wide variety of topics. So, Ani, could you talk about any specific leadership competencies or behaviors that you're trying to bring into the organization? Like, given all of the challenges you've had, are you trying to work on anything specific to move the behaviors of all leaders forward?
Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier the word trust, or the behavior of trust. Working for an organization that is very large, right? 130,000 across 26 states, 96 hospitals, etc. Oftentimes you have breakdown in communication, you have silos, you have us versus them, the finger pointing, they don't understand us, and they're managing from a corporate office and telling us what to do in the front line. All of those, right, that break down the essence of trust. And so as an organization, we said, we're going to focus on building trust. And I'll share with you, because it just occurred this week, in follow up to a leadership conference that our Michigan team held back in the fall. And we invited a speaker in, and she was focused on, you might have heard of the work trust wobble. In trust wobble is looking at, 4 sides of trust. It's reliability, empathy, authenticity, and logic. And I have to look at my cheat sheet when I talk about these 4. But really saying that everybody has a trust wobble, right? There's something that you're really good at, and there's something that you're not really good at. When we did this exercise, with that leadership team, we identified what's your trust wobble? And some individuals in that room, their trust wobble was, reliability, or others it was authenticity. They don't want to bring their real self to work. They don't want people to see them for who they really are. And so the trust wobble exercise, we said we're going to continue to kind of thread into all of our leadership meetings and discussions, and even asking our individual senior leadership teams to have the trust wobble discussion. And your trust wobble might change from day to day. We did this exercise with our HR team across the area that I lead, which is 140 HR colleagues. And interestingly, the top trust wobble was reliability. And when we dug into that, it was, is our team reliable to each other? So, do I have your back type of question? The team didn't feel that to each other they were reliable. So that was really enlightening. And, so we started to do some action planning around reliability within the team. So trust is a big one, right? I mean, and so we're focused on intentionally strengthening that. We know that there are pressures that leaders have. We're asking them to juggle, stabilize your labor, transform care models, maintain engagement, maintain low, turnover in your unit. But we're not giving them perhaps all the support that they need to be able to do that. So how do we trust them with the tools that they have or what they need to be able to do that work? So, without trust, engagement efforts fail. With it, I think teams strengthen and flourish. So that's our focus. One of many, but that's one focus.
I'm glad to hear. I mean, I could corroborate. I would say almost all of the clients that we work with have some level of trust content in their leadership programs. And the models we use similarly have things about reliability in that, and credibility, and having some level of intimacy in your relationship. Like, all those things matter. And it is hard to build trust differently with each person, with each expectation. It's an ongoing practice. And then an executive team working together to have trust when you come together as a team, not just direct report and manager. So yeah, trust is a huge item. I'd say.
It's one thing with your executive leadership teams, but then you have, the social contract with your employees or your colleagues. There's a whole new set of expectations today than there was probably 10 years ago of how people want to establish a social contract with their employer. And it takes trust on many different dimensions to do that.
There was one question from the audience. Almost like maybe I could flip the question the opposite way with this. So as we're doing things like that, have any of you made any bold talent strategy decisions to raise the performance bar for people while constructively doing all these right behaviors? So saying, hey, performance isn't where it needs to be, and I'm holding you accountable to another level. Or are you at a life cycle where it's more like, I need to keep you here, keep you engaged, work is fine. I don't have this sort of message of, top grading or, next level performance. Maureen, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, I can jump in. We are a bit to that point where we're raising our expectations from a performance standpoint. Again, I said it before, we're really, clarifying what those expectations are and making sure we're holding people to that. So, like the what and the how, while we're really focused on the how, the what, being able to deliver and be able to show results, is a performance standard that we're holding people to and making decisions based off of that. So of course, how people accomplish those is still very important, and Domino's is a company that won't stand for a result at any cost. So assuming that the how is in order, if people aren't delivering the what, we're having to make other choices, which is newer, because again, in the past however many years, it's been important just to keep people here and the focus has been otherwise. But now we're at a point where that performance delivery is very important. Thus, what I've been saying before, I'm making sure people very much understand our expectations and what their work is and how it ties to the strategy, and then holding ourselves to that.
I'll share, some of our sites are, one way that they're holding performance is through transparency. And so publishing, organizational measures that everybody is accountable to perform, and sharing transparently where everybody is. And, it's a red-green measure. Nobody wants to be listed in the red, right? And so that just encourages more conversation. It encourages, trying to identify ways that they can improve their performance. So that's one way. And it's simple, but it's also challenging to be vulnerable and be transparent.
I would add, from our perspective, that I would say, are a quite high performing team. Getting the results has been, through all of the challenges that we faced in the last several years, we've been successful in that way. But similar to what Maureen was saying, we're now focusing more on the how are you doing it, especially with the two different organizations coming together. The how was very different. And not necessarily aligned, and there were expectations that were misunderstood. And so through this cultural integration project, we have our values, and they were new for some, and they were the same for others, but really defining, okay, but what does it mean that, people are our priority? Like, what does that really mean? And that can mean so many different things to so many different people. So what we've done work on is, okay, this is the definition. This is what we mean by this. And then even beyond that, it's, okay, well, what does good look like? If you are doing well in this value, what does that good look like? And then what breaks that value? In giving like real examples. And I actually had the opportunity to roll this out last week. We had a global leadership strategy meeting with 60 of our top leaders, and we rolled this out to them. And then the expectation is, okay, you guys are the role models. You need to do this because you need to make sure your employees are feeling what this culture really is and really feeling these values. And it was really received very positively. We had leaders that were 2 weeks in the organization, and they said, yeah, I went through the onboarding, which I think we have a very strong process, and I saw what the values are, but this makes it so much clearer. They're like, I can do this. So that was one thing that's really been valuable to our organization. And I think the other steps will come, but first here's the expectation, make sure you're living by it, and then we'll get to the next step.
Some of the data I showed up front said that there's some employee engagement challenges, and I think you've each, kind of nodded that as well. In an organization, in a time when people aren't moving jobs, they may stay, but they may not be as engaged, and that seems to be what some of the data is, or they're not happy with coming back to the office, et cetera. And I think one of the misnomers is that, well, to fix that, we need to sort of coddle that employee and, do all these things to say, we're happy to have you here. I think there's two sides to that. The other side is you need to have a lofty goal, and you need to inspire somebody to do great things at work and to have goals and objectives and to try to get hooked and accomplish those with a group of peers that are doing something similar. And so I think I'm glad this question was brought up, because, we're actually spending time right now developing a class on the manager's role of empowering somebody. Not feedback, not delegation, not recognition, but just about that role of empowerment around a culture where maybe you say, we don't have a lot of decision rights around here, but manager to employee, how can I help you be the best you in the construct of this job? So I really think this is an important subject for this next year, is engagement and all of those elements around there in terms of role clarity and community and communication, and obviously having pay and benefits that have appropriate living wages and things like that. But it is that here's a lofty goal, and to be worthy to be here, to claim your seat, like do great things around here. And we recognize that as well. So there's a hard and a soft to that. Okay, that last question I think I will have time to get to today is, are there any specific groups of people, like org levels of people, that you feel you need to be focusing on in 2026? Maureen, let me kick it to you first.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, for us, it's our mid managers in a corporate sense and our general managers of our stores. When you think about it, I think it's true for any business. That layer, touches the largest number of team members in an organization. That's definitely true for us. And the reality is very often that they also carry the highest workload. They may have the lowest level of built-in support. They may have the lowest level of overall training. So it is definitely a priority for us. Anyone at Domino's will say our most important employee is the general manager of a pizza store, but then we had to really reflect on, are we living to that? Are we giving that team member, and then we expanded that to our mid-managers in our corporate sense, are we giving them the right level of support and training, expectations, tools, etc.? So we really feel that if we can make that group of employees feel the right level of support, that feeling that we hope to improve in them will really cascade to all of the team members that they touch. So that is why, for 26 and beyond, our focus is almost entirely, without completely foregoing other leadership training and AI capability training. Other than that, we're really focusing in on training that mid-manager level.
Melanie and Ani, or Melanie, you want to go first? Anything different on your end?
Yeah, I would say for us, there's I would say two groups, and they're kind of different. But I think from a direct labor, our hourly workforce, that's assembling the products every single day, they don't get the flexibility that a lot of other people have, right? They have to be there every single day, working overtime a lot of times on weekends. And so it's really of prioritizing how we can focus on them more and offer them opportunities as well. And related to that then is the supervisors that are in the plants working with those employees, because they're the ones that are going to be making that day good or not good for that employee. And then separately, I would say we're focusing on really like succession planning at the managerial and higher levels, because that's something that, again, over the years that have been so challenging, and we've gotten to a place of just being so lean that our bench strength isn't where it needs to be. And so that's where we're going to be focusing as well.
And then Ani, you want to close this off with where you're at?
I would just echo what both, Melanie and Maureen said. In a 24/7 operation, right? It's the front lines that can't stay home in a snowstorm. And how are you supporting them? Middle managers that, continue to just receive more and more and more. And so how do we help them through it? And over the last couple of years, your experience, Melanie, we've had to really focus in on our succession management with our top positions, our CEOs, our chief medical officers, chief nursing officers, and making sure that, do we have a pipeline that's ready, a leadership team that's ready to step in, or if we bring in from the outside, how are we orienting them to our organization and, really leading at Trinity Health?
Awesome. Well, you guys, this hour flew from my viewpoint. Let me just do one closing slide here and first say thank you so much for taking your time and expertise to do this today. If we didn't get to everybody's questions, I apologize, but I know we didn't get to all of our questions as well. But hopefully this helps you from wherever industry organization you sit, come up with kind of understanding where you sit with others. This is that poll I shared with you earlier today. If you want to take that, you get some great feedback or results. I also wanted to share that our next webinar, I'm actually going to be a panelist on this Gallagher webinar about communication. And I think that leads really well into some of what we're talking about. Gallagher does a very robust global study on communication practices, and I'll be partnering with the employee value proposition team out of the UK office, and we'll be talking about the leadership practices, but internal communication practices to lead loud and clear in organizations. So there's a QR code if you want to join that on February 25th. We also just produced our new course catalog. We talked about things like trust and communication and accountability, performance management, have a lot of courses on that. And then look for our annual leadership coaching effectiveness study. It's in the final desktop publishing of that. It'll be out shortly, but annually we measure coaching effectiveness, and that'll be something that you could look at to benchmark coaching in your organization as well. Our next webinar of this series will be in March. I think we're going to be talking about how do you measure leadership effectiveness, like the role of a leader and what's the actual measurement system, not an engagement tool, but a measurement tool. We have another division within our team that does employee surveys, and we've been talking about effectiveness measures, not so much how I do a 360 for self, but like how would it roll up? So I'm really excited to see. I hope I will have that ready for March. Look for that as well. And our community will be sending you out emails and LinkedIn's as well. So thanks again for taking an hour of your time. And Ani, Maureen, Melanie, this was wonderful. Thank you very much. And enjoy your day, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.